What if the single best thing you could ever do for your garden soil has been rotting in a barn somewhere for centuries, and nobody told you about it? Professional growers know about this. Certain old school farmers know about it. But somehow it never made it into the mainstream gardening conversation. And when you find out what it is, you're going to be equal parts fascinated and genuinely annoyed that nobody mentioned it sooner. Here's what you do need to know right now. It costs almost nothing, it's completely natural, and it does something underground that no drip system, no moisture sensor, and no bag of synthetic fertilizer can replicate. We're burying something. And what happens after that burial is going to change the way you think about soil moisture forever. But first, we need to talk about why your current watering system might actually be making your soil worse. And there's one specific way it's failing you that almost nobody is talking about. The hidden problem with modern irrigation. Here's something nobody in the garden world wants to admit right now. The way most of us water our gardens is fundamentally broken. And now, with the climate doing things it's never done before, that problem is getting worse by the season. Think about what overhead watering actually does. You turn on the sprinkler, water rains down, the top 2 inches of soil get wet, and then, almost immediately, evaporation kicks in and steals a massive chunk of it right back. You're essentially fighting the sun every single day. And with summer temperatures swinging harder and faster than they ever have, that fight is getting more exhausting and more expensive. But here's the thing that really should alarm you. Synthetic moisture pellets and water retention granules, those little gel crystals people mix into their potting soil, are designed for a stable, predictable climate. When you get a week of brutal heat followed by a freak rainstorm followed by another heat wave, those products get confused. They either hold too much water and drown your roots, or they dry out and become basically useless little plastic pebbles doing nothing in your soil. And none of that is even the worst part. The worst part is something happening underneath your soil that your watering schedule is completely powerless to fix. It's called biological drought, and there's a good chance it's already happening in your garden beds right now. Biological drought is not just your soil being dry. It's your soil losing the ability to hold moisture in the first place. It happens when synthetic inputs kill off the microbial life that creates the structure in healthy soil. When those microbes disappear, the tiny channels and pores that hold water collapse. So even when you water consistently, the water runs right through or pools on the surface and evaporates. Your plants look thirsty even though you're watering every day, because the soil has essentially forgotten how to do its job. You have almost certainly seen this. You water. The soil looks wet for 20 minutes. Then it looks bone dry again. That is biological drought, and a hose and a bag of synthetic granules are never going to fix it. So what does fix it? Well, that's where things get really interesting, because the answer isn't something you buy at a garden center. It's something that shepherds and farmers stumbled onto long before anyone invented a moisture sensor. And the reason it works comes down to some genuinely wild physics that you are not going to see coming. The secret physics of the underground fleece reservoir. Okay, it's time to talk about what we're actually burying. Raw sheep wool. Not processed, not turned into pellets, not sanitized or treated in any way. Just straight off the sheep fleece, buried directly beneath your heaviest feeding plants. And before you wonder whether this actually does anything meaningful, the numbers are going to stop you in your tracks. Raw sheep wool can hold up to 20 times its own weight in water. 20 times! Bare soil holds somewhere between 1 and 2 times its weight depending on composition. Even peat moss, the gold standard for moisture retention for decades, caps out at about 8 to 10 times its weight. Wool doesn't just beat them. It's not even a fair competition. But here's where it gets genuinely strange, because raw weight to water ratio is only part of the story. There's a coating on every single fiber of unwashed sheep wool that does something almost paradoxical, something that no synthetic product has ever been able to replicate. And once you understand what it does, the whole system clicks into place in a way that's almost elegant. It's called lanolin, and it works in a way that's going to completely reframe how you think about water in your soil. During a heavy rain or an overwatering event, lanolin's natural properties actually repel excess water, preventing the wool from becoming waterlogged and suffocating your roots. But during drought conditions, when the surrounding soil is bone dry and pulling moisture from everywhere it can find, that same lanolin structure dramatically slows the release of stored water. It rations it. It meters it out to your plants over days and weeks instead of hours. It's like having a reservoir underground that automatically knows when to hold back and when to give. No sensor, no timer, no electricity, just chemistry that evolved over millions of years. And there's still one more layer to this that makes the whole thing almost unfair. Something that happens slowly, over months, that turns us from a moisture solution into something much bigger. But to understand that part, you first need to see exactly how this gets buried, because the technique is everything, and most people who try this get it wrong in a way that kills the whole system. The strategic burial method for maximum hydration. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes when they first hear about this. They figure wool helps with moisture, so they throw some on top of the soil and call it a day. And here's the thing, that does something. Surface application gives you roughly a 35% improvement in moisture retention. That's a real number, and it's not nothing. But root zone burial, placing the wool in a trench directly beneath your plants, delivers closer to 95% retention efficiency. You are not even in the same conversation anymore. The reason comes down to exposure. At the surface, wind, UV, and temperature swings all work against the wool's ability to hold and release moisture consistently. Underground, protected from all those variables, the wool becomes a permanent subterranean reservoir that your roots grow into over time and access directly. It stops being a surface treatment and starts being infrastructure. So here's the method. You are going to dig what's called a wool trench. For most garden beds, you're digging down about 12 to 18 inches, deeper than your typical trowel work, but this is a one-time investment, and what you're building down there is essentially permanent. At the bottom of the trench, you lay down a generous loose layer of raw, unwashed fleece. Loose is the key word. You want it airy and uncompressed. You are building a sponge, not packing a pillow. Compressed wool loses a significant percentage of its holding capacity because the fibers can't expand properly when they absorb water. And this next step is the one people skip, and it ruins everything. You cover that wool layer with a good 4 to 6 inches of native soil before you plant anything. If your plant roots hit the wool layer too early, before they've developed enough root mass to handle the moisture gradient, you can create a wicking effect that actually pulls moisture away from the upper soil. The buffer layer prevents that. Soil first, then roots find the wool naturally as they develop downward. For high transpiration crops, hybrid tomatoes especially, because they are among the most demanding plants you can grow, the wool-to-soil ratio matters enormously. A solid baseline is roughly 1 pound of raw fleece per square foot of planting area. Hybrid tomatoes are bred for maximum fruit production, which means they push water through their systems at a rate that would drain a standard garden bed in days during peak summer heat. With a properly laid wool trench at that ratio, you're looking at going from daily watering down to once or twice a week, even during heat waves. Now remember that third layer to the wool story, the slow one, the one that turns this from a moisture solution into something much bigger? Here it is. Wool is a nitrogen-rich organic fiber. As it breaks down underground, it releases nitrogen directly into the root zone, exactly where your heavy feeders need it most. But more importantly, that decomposition feeds the microbial life in your soil. Those microbes rebuild the pore structure. The pore structure holds more moisture on its own. And suddenly, you're not just solving this season's drought problem, you are actively reversing the biological drought that synthetic products created in the first place. The wool feeds the microbes. The microbes rebuild the soil. The soil learns to hold water again. That loop, once it starts, keeps going long after the wool itself is gone. So here's where everything lands. Your garden is dealing with a climate that no longer plays by the old rules. Overhead watering is losing a daily battle against evaporation. Synthetic products are failing to adapt to conditions they were never designed for. And underneath all of it, biological drought is quietly dismantling the very structure that makes healthy soil possible. A wool trench, raw unwashed fleece buried at root depth beneath your heaviest feeders, solves all three of those problems at once. It holds up to 20 times its weight in water. Its lanolin coating automatically manages excess during floods and conserves during drought. And as it breaks down, it rebuilds the living soil biology that modern gardening has been slowly destroying for decades. This is not a trendy hack. This is not a sponsored product. This is an ancient technique that works because it works with the natural systems already in your soil rather than trying to replace them. When you're ready to source your fleece, start local. Small sheep farms and fiber co-ops will often sell raw wool for next to nothing, since many consider it a waste byproduct. If there's nothing nearby, a quick search online will turn up plenty of options, and Etsy in particular has a community of small-scale shepherds selling raw, unwashed fleece by the pound. Dig the trench, lay the fleece loose, add your soil buffer, plant your heavy feeders above it, then watch what happens when the next heat wave hits. That's all for now. Subscribe to see more.